When you're standing in the bathroom, watching the water finally heat up after you've turned the tap, you can't help but wonder if that half-hour wait is really necessary. I get that question a lot from friends who are thinking about swapping out their old tank for something that promises endless hot water without blowing a hole in the budget. The reality is you want a system that actually matches your family's routine, not a one-size-fits-all unit that leaves you with lukewarm showers or a hefty gas bill. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's walk through what it feels like to live with a 10 GPM natural gas tankless water heater and see whether the Takagi TK540P NIH lives up to the hype, or if you'd be better off sticking with the old storage tank. First off, the big headline on this model is the 10-gallon per minute flow rating. In plain English, that means you could theoretically run 2 showers, a dishwasher, and a washing machine at the same time and still have hot water coming out of every faucet. For a household of 4 or 5 where morning routines overlap, that's a real convenience. The unit's 199,000 BTU input gives it the grunt to keep that temperature steady, even when the incoming water is cold in the winter. If you've ever tried to take a second shower while the first one is still running and ended up with a sudden cold splash, you'll recognize that difference immediately. Installation, however, is where the rubber meets the road. This is a natural gas model, so you'll need a properly sized gas line, a venting system that can handle high-temperature exhaust, and enough clearance for the unit itself. The Ni suffix stands for non-interference housing, meaning the heater is designed to fit into tighter spaces than some bulkier commercial-grade units. That can be a lifesaver if you're retrofitting in a cramped basement or a utility closet that was originally built for a standard 40-gallon tank. Still, you can't just slap it onto an existing gas line that was sized for a low BTU appliance. You'll likely need a professional plumber to run a larger pipe and install the stainless steel venting. The upfront labor cost can add a few $100s to the project, which is something to keep in mind if you're budgeting tightly. Now, let's talk about the day-to-day experience. After the initial startup, the heater reaches its operating temperature in under a minute. I've used it in a 4-person household for a couple of weeks, and the first thing I noticed was the elimination of that dreaded cold water sandwich, the brief burst of cooler water you get right after you turn the shower on, which is a common complaint with lower capacity tankless units. Because the TK540P NIH can sustain a higher flow, it maintains a more consistent output temperature even when demand spikes. The water feels just as hot as the water you'd get from a traditional tank, and there's no noticeable lag once the faucet is opened. Energy usage is another practical angle. Because the heater only fires up when you actually need hot water, you avoid the standby loss you get with a tank that keeps a full 40-gallon column of water heated around the clock. For a natural gas home, the savings can be modest but noticeable on the monthly utility bill, especially if you've been running a tank that cycles on and off all day. The Takagi's efficiency rating isn't published in the snippet we have, but Takagi's reputation in the market leans toward high-efficiency models, and the 199,000 BTU input suggests it's built to extract a lot of heat from each unit of gas. There are, of course, some trade-offs that show up after you've lived with the unit for a while. The most common maintenance issue with gas tankless heaters is mineral buildup in the heat exchanger, especially if you have hard water. The TK540P NIH doesn't come with a built-in water softening system, so you'll need to schedule an annual descaling flush if you're in an area with high calcium levels. Skipping that step can gradually reduce the flow rate and force the unit to work harder, which erodes the very efficiency you were hoping to gain. If you already have a whole house water softener, that's less of a worry, but it's still something to factor into the total cost of ownership. Another point to consider is the noise level. Gas burners do generate a faint hum when they're firing, and the Takagi's combustion chamber isn't completely silent. In a quiet household, you might notice a low-level rumble in the utility room when multiple fixtures are drawing hot water simultaneously. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's worth noting if you're sensitive to background sounds or if the unit will be installed near a living space. Who should really think about buying this heater? If you have a medium-tonnage family, run multiple appliances that need hot water at the same time, or simply hate waiting for a tank to recover after a big load of laundry, the 10 GPM capacity gives you a safety net. Homeowners,